the greatest completely legal loophole you know about? Story 1. Suing telemarketers. A lot of people don't know that telemarketers break a lot of laws because pretty much no one calls them out on it or threatens to sue. Here is a write-up someone did on it with sources. Story 2. One that is no longer in use, but I heard about it a long time ago and thought it was genius. During the 1970s, a Bulgarian human rights dissident was expelled from his home country to West Germany. He figured out his own private way to get back at Soviet communism. Once a month, he chose a dissident imprisoned in the Soviet Union and wrote him a personal letter. But before mailing it, he would take it to the post office and have it insured against it being opened or tampered with. The Soviet government, naturally, would intercept the letter, open it, and photocopy the contents. But because the letter was insured, they would have to pay the insurance award. If they didn't, they would be kicked out of the International Postal Union. The IPU let the Bulgarian dissident do this to a maximum of one time a month, so as to not abuse the insurance system. So for years, this man would write a letter of support to an imprisoned human rights activist in the USSR. And 1 month later, he would receive a check from the USSR for a total of $400. Edit. Thank you. And a shout out to UPA2SK for tracking down the original story. My recall isn't perfect and I got a few of the details wrong. Story 3. I got married to my college girlfriend so that she could claim in-state residency and finish her degree at my university for like half the cost they would have charged her as an out-of-state student. I also looked like a very poor head of household on paper and received a ton of grant money towards my own degree. 1010 would wed again. Story 4. Here in Costa Rica, it's quite hard for foreigners to get a work visa or residency. However, it's very easy to enter the country as a tourist. The only requirement for tourists is that they can't be here for more than 3 months. So, instead of going through the whole process of getting a work visa, at least 80% of the people I know here with foreign blood simply drive up to the Nicaraguan border and come back every 3 months, allowing them to become what is known as a perpetual tourist. I know some people that have been exploiting that loophole completely legally for about a decade. Story 5. Ferens v. John Deere. A plaintiff that had a tractor accident in one state waited until after the statute of limitations had passed to go seek legal counsel. Most lawyers would have given up. Instead, this genius son of a filed the lawsuit in a different state that had more permissive statute of limitations laws, then filed a motion to transfer the case back to the plaintiff's home state for the convenience of the parties involved. Motion granted. In law school, you quickly find out that great legal loopholes are a Hollywood fiction for the most part. But this is the stuff of legend, and really clever lawyering. There's more to this story, but I'm drunk and sleepy. Source: M Lawyer. Story 6. This cop told someone I knew that if someone broke into your house, you could kill them as opposed to injuring them to avoid an excessive force lawsuit. If they're dead, it's your word against his and he's dead and you're the victim. Story 7. When your pawn has moved 3 spaces forward and your opponent moves one of their pawns 2 spaces forward so that it's next to your pawn, under the assumption that this means you now can't take it, you can move your pawn diagonally behind theirs as if it had only moved 1 space forward and take it, despite not moving to where the pawn actually was. Story 8. You can't do this anymore either, but when the US was trying to introduce the dollar coin, they were offering each coin for exactly $1, no tax, free shipping, in an effort to get them into circulation. People were maxing out credit cards purchasing these coins for the frequent flyer miles, then turning around and depositing these coins back into their account, costing them nothing. I heard that some people got away with doing this many times, racking up millions of frequent flyer miles before they had to end the $1 with free shipping program. Story 9. According to a law professor, there's a 50 square mile area in Idaho where you can get away with rape and murder. Story 10. This is on a much smaller scale than most things presented here, but I'm proud of it. My senior year in high school in Texas, 2002-2003, my friends and I found out that if you have too many absences, you had to make up for it during Saturday school. Well, it turns out that Saturday school is only half a day, and it makes up for 3 absences. So me and 3 other friends would constantly skip school. We didn't do sports, so we had all our credits anyway, well before end of the year. And then on Friday nights have a LAN party and play Warcraft 3 or Star Wars Galaxies all night. The next morning, tired as we'd drive to Saturday school and just kind of sit and stare, doze off for about 4 hours and have our absences erased. Story 11. I used to work for a non-profit school that was funded by the state. There was a regulation that the school had to disclose how much the executives were paid. But there was no regulation against outsourcing executive functions. And there was no regulation against outsourcing to a for-profit company that didn't have to disclose anything. And there was no regulation against outsourcing to a for-profit that the executives owned. Story 12. Criminal barrister here, a couple of my favorites. Young man arrested on possession charge after a vehicle search. He admits possession of cannabis and gives his reply to caution, which is recorded in the officer's notebook as, "Don't strip search me." The case is an anticipated guilty plea, but at the first appearance his instructions are that the officer threatened to strip search him if he didn't admit the drugs were his, takes it to trial on this issue. Officer denies ever mentioning strip searching the defendant. At trial, the officer is questioned as to why the reply to caution was, "Don't strip search me," if the officer had never mentioned a strip search. Pretty clever to set that up in my opinion. I do a lot of road traffic work as well, and some of the points taken are quite entertaining, such as putting the prosecution to strict proof in respect of the speed limit for a particular road, and insisting upon a strict interpretation of what evidence would be permissible to that end. Story 13. Pretty small thing, but it's one I use really often. Stop signs in parking lots aren't legally enforceable. They're on private property and out of police jurisdiction. So the next time you're leaving Walmart at 3 a.m., feel free to roll through that annoying stop sign in the middle of the empty parking lot with no possible repercussions. You rebel. Edit. Looks like these signs aren't usually enforceable. Certain states may have adopted laws to allow ticketing for private property infractions. Check your local laws before becoming a 3 a.m. Walmart rebel. Story 14. Throwaway. For obvious reasons, I have earned over $90,000 by getting compensated by airlines. This is a simple trick that works well. If you know certain routes at your airport are always oversold, just buy a fully refundable fare a few days before the flight takes off. Usually this will be one or more of the oversold tickets. Just go to the airport and offer to give up your seat and reap the rewards. If not needed, just refund your ticket. Usually I book 12-18 tickets in one day and hit one after another up until my planned departure in the evening. I try to spread it across 5+ airlines to avoid seeing the same staff. I fly for free everywhere in the world. Southwest has the best policy, usually $300 plus twice the value of your ticket. I have thousands of dollars of credit with all the airlines that I can't even use it fast enough. Story 15. In Denver, the city places about 10 photo radar vans at various locations around the city. If you're speeding, the radar van snaps multiple pictures of the driver, the car, and the license plate. A few weeks later, a ticket arrives in the mail with the pictures and a $40 fine, $80 if in a work zone. However, there is a beautiful little clause at the bottom of the ticket that says, if you are not the person pictured in the violation notice, you may sign and mail in the not pictured driver affidavit located on the back of your notice of violation or penalty assessment notice. You must submit a legible, clear photocopy of your driver's license with the not pictured driver affidavit. The affidavit and supporting documentation will be reviewed by a Denver Police Department employee, and a determination will be made regarding the identity of the actual driver. If further information is required, you may be contacted by the Photo Enforcement Unit. If it is determined that you are not the driver, the case against you will be dismissed. Source: my parents figured out this loophole years ago and have had their cars registered to each other for many years for the sole reason of getting out of photo radar van speeding tickets. Story 16. This one is because of my roommates. They would rate a Pizza Hut nearby us and get a free pizza. Go down, get the pizza, rate the Pizza Hut and get a free pizza. Basically, they never had to pay for a pizza from Pizza Hut. However, because they aren't assholes, they would also buy other stuff. Drinks, desserts, or garlic bread. Story 17. If you tell them it's for AE, you get free bread at Subway. Edit. There's two types of people in this world. Those that know Mitch Hedberg, and then those that need to hurry up and discover him. Story 18. UK. Heard that technically you don't need planning permission for stuff you build on your own land, if nobody objects within 4 years of you building it. Someone stacked hay bales ridiculously high, shielding his property from view, then built a fucking castle behind it. Nobody could object to him building it because no one knew about it. 4 years after he finished, he took the hay down and nobody can take his castle away. They're still trying to, though. Story 19. I bought a historic office building, that used to be a school, using a residential home loan many years ago. This worked because the zoning was R residential. I put very little money down, had low payments, and kept the whole transaction simple. Bought it for $400K, sold it for $800K, and legally used it for my office for 4 years. Story 20. If anyone wants to find the actual article, I believe there was a man in Texas, assume homeless or poor, who got a nice 3 to 4 bedroom home for a whole $35. When the previous owners left their suburb home, I assume a lack of payment, he paid the fee to have the home transferred to him. I believe the only stipulation was to stay 3 years and it becomes his. No mortgage, no rent, just a $35 piece of paper. Neighborhood was pretty pissed. I applaud the man for his craftiness. Story 21. Want a handgun but aren't 21? Private gun sales in a lot of states are 18 and older, including handguns. That's how I got mine. And it's totally legal in my state, given that you're not a felon, obviously. Story 22. Doesn't apply outside of Scotland, but corroboration is pretty neat. It means at least two different and independent sources of evidence are required in support of each crucial fact before a defendant can be convicted of a crime. Story 23. Right to repair. Void the warranty because you broke open your Xbox to find the part you need is a pain in the... Send it to Microsoft. They still have to fix it, even though the warranty states that it is void if opened. But if you opened with intent of repair, they have to fix it. Story 24. Worked at a restaurant where we had a promotion during the holidays. If you bought a $25 gift card, you get a $5 gift card as well as a bottle of sauce. I bought a ton of gift cards with my own money. I got the extra $5 gift cards and bottles. Sold the bottles of sauce for cheap on a local garage sale site. They retail for $8 from the restaurant. I also use the gift cards on all of my cash tables. Customer pays with cash. I use the gift cards to close out their check and use the cash to pay myself back for the gift cards. So basically, it was a free $5 for me for every $25 gift card I bought. I also won the gift card contest we had. Story 25. If you have a tribal membership card to any federally recognized Native American tribe, you're exempt from Obamacare's individual mandate. The requirements for membership are set by the individual tribes, and some of them are really lax. If you have one ancestor several generations back who was on the tribal rolls, they'll let you in. Story 26. Want to live in Europe without a visa or legal rights to do so? Do you want to work in a highly paid European country but don't want to bother with getting a visa? Got to Svalbard in Norway. Anyone can work or live there indefinitely without a visa. Story 27. So me and my roommate both have Xbox Ones and play a lot of the same games. Besides having to both pay $60 for a game, we both set the other's Xbox as our home Xbox and continue to sign in and play on our own Xbox. So when one of us buys a game, it automatically downloads on the other. Also, gold is shared. Story 28. Even if someone smells like they've been drinking on before the job, we're unable to officially say so, due to the fact we don't have a breathalyzer at work. When I found that out, I was dumbstruck. Story 29. 123 movies. Pirate Bay, KDOI, etc. They don't have any pirated material on their sites. They just host the sharing of them from other websites, people. They aren't really doing anything illegal, and companies' government can't touch it, especially when they are hosted in foreign countries that don't give a. Story 30. If you have a lot of money, laws do not apply to you. Even if you gained the money illegally, the law does not apply to you. There is a legal loophole in this loophole, though. If you hurt another person with a lot of money, then the law applies to you. Story 31. Not as deep, but ordering a triple steak burger from Steak and Shake, $3.99 value menu W fries, then ask for it on sourdough bread and add Frisco sauce. Boom. Triple Frisco burger and fries for less than a Frisco melt. Story 32. If you have any sort of hobby that you can show is profitable, you can claim it on your taxes. IRS will see it as a small business for about 5 years. Obviously, you don't want to do this if it is profitable. It's just a backdoor way to get a little refund from a hobby. Story 33. If you do your own brake job, you can buy brakes from AutoZone that include a warranty. This warranty just so happens to cover normal wear and tear. Every time you need new brakes, bring in the worn-out ones and you get a new set for free. Seriously amazing. Story 34. I work at an outdoor market and we serve beer. We get past the laws by selling a token that the beer stand next to us happens to trade for a beer. Then they bring the tokens to us and we give them money. Story 35. My brother told me this one works, but I haven't tried it, so not sure. If you get a speeding ticket, send a check for $1 more ham the amount charged. They will send a check back for the overpayment and will not be able to report to insurance until you cash the check, as it is not considered a complete transaction. Rip up the check and avoid the insurance premium increase. Story 36. I know that a lot of law enforcement agencies the world over have trouble getting the perpetrator if they have an identical twin who is willing to also say they did it. People have walked free because of it. Story 37. A German company should have paid 128 million euro to the government. They transferred the company to another mother company, moved everything into the mother company by doing some restructurizing, and then deleted the old company. No money could be collected. It was in the news under the name Wurstlücke. Story 38. A professor at my undergrad was famous for his strictness and propriety. He had a handbook that he had written himself on the codes of conduct for the class that was at least half an inch thick. A real shitting diamonds type, and I hated the class. Him, and everything he stood for. One of the prohibitions spelled out in very clear legalistic language was, no baseball hats in class. I observed that rule to the very letter. Every day that term I wore a sombrero. Story 39. The poop hole loophole. Very popular in Catholic schools. Basically, girls see it as a sin to lose their virginity before wedlock, but is totally acceptable. Please no one tell them. Story 40. This is going to get buried, but a fast food chain in my country had a campaign on their receipts where you could get a free hamburger, which was a cheap one, $2 I think, by showing the receipt. It was printed on the receipt. When you bought one of the free hamburgers, a receipt followed, with another coupon for a free hamburger. Story 41. Might not work outside France. When you blow more than the legal limit, the cops are supposed to take you to the station, where they get you to blow into another, more precise machine. Afterwards, you attack the fine and/or suspension on the grounds that they don't keep logs for use of the machine at the station, and can't prove that it wasn't used in the 30 minutes before you used it. Alcohol having been ruled to stay in the air for 30 minutes by the higher courts. Edit. To be clear, I'm not for driving drunk, and here appeal on a fine or suspension can take up to 2 months. Story 42. If you lose the last points on your license in NS dollars and overpay the fine, say by check or money order, they will send you a refund. As long as you don't cash the refund, you won't lose the points, and therefore your license. Story 43. Not sure if this is proven or not. Was driving 2 of my friends home from a bar one night. One of them was about to begin law school. We were exiting the parking lot, and there's a side exit that makes it easier to get back to the main road. The only problem is that there is a sign next to it that says, "This is not an entrance." I was hesitant about going through it because police were always around that part of town due to the bar scene. My soon-to-be law school friend said, "We're not using it as an entrance, though. We're using it as an exit. Go ahead." Best use of twisting words I'd ever witnessed. Story 44. I met a man on a plane who told me his best friend is a retired pilot. Apparently back in the day, banks didn't exchange small change from other countries because it wasn't worth sending all the change back, so they would sell foreign coins by the bag by weight. This pilot would buy bags of change, and when he flew to the country the change was from, he would exchange it for a lot more than he paid for it. Story 45. You can game the free voucher for voluntary bumping at most airlines by intentionally booking yourself on a busy earlier flight if you know that a less busy later flight will get you to your destination at a reasonable time. It requires some knowledge of the schedules, but there are predictable flights that tend to get overbooked all the time. I used to fly a Friday commuter shuttle every week. I could easily make my connecting flight if I took the 7 p.m. shuttle into DC, but I would book the 5:30 flight instead. Every week, I'd be the first one to jump up when they asked for volunteers. In 1 year, I accumulated enough vouchers and free round-trip tickets to take my wife and kids with me to Hawaii, twice. Best of all, I'd always ask for and receive meal vouchers. So I got to eat dinner for free while I waited for the flight I actually would have booked anyway. It pissed off some of the gate agents, but what could they do? They needed those seats. Story 46. This guy set up his own premium phone line for those annoying spam phone calls you get. Basically, you just warn them in advance it's a premium rate number and keep them talking. Story 47. There is a section of Idaho that has a loophole in its jurisdiction. Technically, you can get away with murder. Story 48. I rented a store last year, and we opened a small shop. It's in a small complex with 5 other shops. The owners of the property do not pay the bank for their loan, and it gets repossessed by the bank and put up on auction. These same guys go and buy it again at auction, but with a different company. They have several. At the auction, they have to come up with 20%, I think, and they pay that, but then nothing else. Yet they take the rental income this whole time. It takes about a year before repossession happens again, and they just repeat the same trick. The 20% they pay each time is way less than the rental income for a year, so they just keep on making this profit year after year. They have now done it twice since we started renting there. I don't know how long this has been going on. We spoke to the officer of the court at the last auction, and he admitted to knowing what was going on, but said that they are not breaking any laws other than not paying their debt. Story 49. If you live in Washington State and want to renew your license for free, you can take yourself off the organ donor registry list and not pay a dime for a license renewal. Story 50. In AZ, we have a jacked up law where he who pays the property tax owns the property. Basically, I can log into the county assessor's website and see who isn't paying property tax, usually due to the home being paid off, and pay it. Once I pay it, the owner of the property must pay me back plus interest in order to reclaim their land. If I hold on to it for a year, I can legally evict the owner from the house as it becomes mine. This was a big to-do back in 08-09 when the markets took a dump. Story 51, tax loss selling. I was working for a wealth management firm in Canada in November 2015 when Justin Trudeau became the Prime Minister. His campaign was largely centered around cutting taxes on the middle class and raising them on the upper class. All of our clients were very wealthy and impacted by the tax changes. Any capital gains on investments in Canada are subject to taxation. We spent the next couple of months engaging in tax loss selling, which essentially means selling off any securities, stocks, bonds, etc., where the client had a capital loss. This offsets any capital gains that would have otherwise been taxed and gets rid of shitty investments that didn't work out. If a client had $50,000 in capital gains, 50% or $25,000 of that gain is subject to tax. By selling off investments where there was a capital loss of $50,000, the client's net gain for that year is actually $0, which obviously can't be taxed. Doesn't seem like that big of deal, but if all of your clients had $20 million in capital gains for 1 year combined, that's $10 million that the government didn't get to tax. Story 52. Not so much legal as a nice loophole. Many Serta mattresses, others may too, have a 10-year warranty against losing their shape. I know that Sam's Club will give you a refund in cash of 100% the purchase price with a receipt. No questions asked. Again, other places may too. I'm on my third mattress where I return the old one and pay a little more for the next nicer model. Eventually, I'll either find a mattress that doesn't lose shape, or I'll have a new mattress every year forever. Save your receipt. Story 53. Innocent until proven guilty. Not just, we know he's guilty. Not just, it must have been him, or someone like him. Not, he was there. Proven guilty, regardless of how tedious that chore is and how obvious his guilt is. Proven. Yes, jump through all those useless hoops. I used to be a prosecutor. I am aware of how obvious guilt usually is. Even so, we went through the whole procedure. Otherwise, we would have imprisoned or fined or even executed a person who was, by our law, innocent. Wasn't always like that. Used to be, he turned me into a newt, was sufficient. Especially if the newt in question was well thought of by the mob, and the conjurer was a stranger. Used to be that, it's obvious was proof enough. Greatest loophole ever. Not honored everywhere. Guilty until proven innocent seems un-American. It's un-British. It is French. Was French anyway. Story 54. Results may vary by state, but if you get a speeding ticket, go to court. If the cop doesn't show up, you win. If they do, ask how they clocked your speed. No matter what method they used, ask when the equipment was last calibrated and ask for the records. They can't provide those as evidence you win. Works in theory, but the judge can just say, screw you and find you guilty for being a little. Story 55. I used to work for a background check company. If you are declined employment because of your background check, we were legally obligated to give you a copy of what we gave the employer. And if you contest it, we have to contact the company that bought the report and tell them that they can't deny employment based on that report until we confirm identity. Thing is, if you say that wasn't you and it had to be someone with the same name or a case of identity theft, it is almost impossible for us to prove you are lying in a timely manner. There's no guidelines on how long we have to allow the subject to dispute the report or reasons why they can't dispute it, and each attempt to confirm the record will take a week at least, often longer. I worked on one, report came up with same first and last name, same date of birth, in a jurisdiction we confirmed the subject lived in at that time. It was as solid as any report we could provide since our electronic search database did not have SSNs or mugshots. The guy said it wasn't him. We call the client, tell them there were some problems with the report, and we have to investigate it further. We contact the jurisdiction the record came from, ask if they have more identifying information in their hard copies. Yep, they have his SSN. It matches. They send us copies. A week or so later, we contact the subject. The county reports that your SSN was provided. Someone stole my identity. It wasn't me. Contact county. Ask them if they have any mugshots. We have to send them a written request, and it will take time to find them since they were several years old. Client is calling us back almost every day to see if the report is completed yet. It's been almost a month. Tell them we should have a mugshot for confirmation soon. When we eventually do, we send a copy of the picture to the recruiter. Is this your applicant? Looks like it could be him. They ask him if that mugshot is him. Nope, that's not me. When the client hears that we still can't authorize the report, they give up and hire the guy anyway. In a strange coincidence, I ended up working in the cubicle next to him a couple of years later. When he finds out I used to work for background checks, he laughs and tells me how he almost didn't get the job because of us. And I remember because I was the investigator who did his report. Asked if it really was him, he laughed and said, of course not. Someone stole his identity, but he was laughing, and knowing his personal proclivities by then, I knew it was him. Now, some companies will just say they are not hiring the applicant for a different reason, but that's really risky. The applicant has a paper trail showing that he was considered for employment. A report was ordered, and he was told he was no longer considered. He has a good case against the employer, and would have one against us if we didn't tell the client that the report was unconfirmed. Most large companies won't risk it. TLDR: if you are denied employment due to a criminal background check, just repeatedly deny that the record was you, and you will probably either get the job or a strong case against the employer. Story 56. I have a cool one. My buddy overstayed by about 10 years in the U.S., ran a company, paid taxes, no problem. But he couldn't fly anywhere, obviously, and if he got in trouble with the law, he could have been deported. Anyway, one day he got the beat out of him by a taxi driver. They tried to press charges, but for some reason they couldn't touch the guy, despite knowing where he lives, works, etc. His lawyer found that he could apply for a victim of a violent crime visa. He did, and now he's legal and can enter the country without fear of deportation. There's obviously more to this story, but that's the gist. Story 57. Until sometime in 2011, you could buy dollar coins from the US Mint website for face value and have them shipped to you for free. Get a credit card with a high enough credit limit, say $10K. Buy $1,000 coins for $10K. Take them to the bank, put them in your account, and pay your credit card and earn rewards points. People were racking up enough points for a few years' worth of vacations just by waiting for the mail and driving to the bank a few times a month. Story 58. When George Washington lived in Pennsylvania, buying slaves was illegal in the state. However, owning was not, but only for a small period of time per the Gradual Abolition Act of 1780, which said that any slave who entered Pennsylvania with an owner and lived in the state for longer than 6 months would be set free after that time. Rather than buy all new slaves after 6 months, he would send them to the Mount Vernon estate in Virginia with his wife, and, after a day, they would return and the clock would start over again. Obviously not legal now, but a legal loophole then, and completely secret from anyone but the Washingtons and their legal advisor. Story 59. A case from the 90s in the UK. A man called Cheeseman was caught masturbating in a public toilet by 2 police officers after several complaints had been made. He was taken to court, and the law that he had been charged under was unclear in terminology, as it was from the 1800s and had old language. The section in question was that a person cannot reveal themselves to a passenger. Passenger in the 1800s, when the law was made, meant passerby. As the police were there on business and were not passersby, they were not covered by the act, and Cheeseman got away with openly masturbating in front of police. Story 60. This one isn't necessarily great since it can get drunk drivers off the hook, but it's interesting. In Maine, police have to wait 15 minutes from your last drink before giving you a breathalyzer. If you burp, the clock restarts. They do this because alcohol vapors in your mouth can severely skew the device. Of course, they can still have you perform all the other tests. Someone told me this a number of years ago, and I didn't believe him, but I read about it on some law firm's website later on. Story 61. It's a pretty small loophole in the bigger scheme of things, but for a broke college student as myself, it's pretty important for me. We have an IHOP on campus. One of the most filling meals it offers comes with hash browns, choice of meat, 2 eggs, and 2 pancakes. It's around $10 for the whole thing. However, my college also offers a meal plan that allows us to swipe our college ID at certain restaurants for certain meals. For example, at that same IHOP, you can get hash browns, choice of meat, and 2 eggs for 1 swipe. Getting a side of 2 pancakes is $1.15. I've abused this quite a bit, as I'm getting a $10 meal for around $2. It might not be the biggest loophole out there, but is it a nice one? Story 62. Create a non-profit global charity as one of the most powerful couples in the world. Reap millions of dollars in donations before you become the most powerful person in the world. If you lose, you still have $300 million you don't have to give back to anyone. Source. One of the infamous WikiLeaks documents revealed just how blurry the line was between the foundation's non-profit activities and Bill Clinton's for-profit activities. Story 63. Manufacturer spending. When you sign up for a credit card that offers reward points based on how much you spend on that credit card, you can get free reward points by simply beating the system. Here's how it works. Sign up for a credit card like Chase Sapphire Preferred. They will give you an extra 50,000 bonus points, cash value of $750, if you spend $4,000 within the first 3 months of owning the credit card. You can't just buy and return items. You have to actually spend the money on a product. Here's what you do. Step 1. Buy a $500 Visa gift cards with your credit card. This will work as a debit card. Step 2. Take $500 Visa gift card to a business that will let you spend that debit card on a money order, i.e., Safeway. Step 3. Buy money order for $500 and bring to bank to cash it out. Step 4. Use that money order to pay off your credit card debt. Please note that you will often be charged $5 to use a credit card to buy the $500 Visa gift card, but the amount paid on the cards will not outweigh the total rewards you get from Chase. Story 64. In California, you can transfer vehicle title to from related family members without paying tax or requiring a smog certificate. I have purchased and sold cars within my family and saved a lot of money. Here is the form. Story 65. Did you know that people with disabilities do not have to be paid minimum wage? At least in my country, that is the case. While your business would be attacked by workers' unions if you didn't pay minimum wage to normal workers, paying far less to disabled workers is completely legal. I know of a company that does packing with severely disabled citizens and exploits this. Half the reason I'm going to college is so that I can get a salary and not be paid too a year at whatever job I end up getting. Story 66. Are you broke? Are you in school, college grad? Is your SO or close friend in school? If you get married, it costs only the license costs if you don't put on the party or someone else pays. Then you no longer have to report parents' income for FAFSA. Some LGBT couples I know use this to get around having been disowned but still being young enough to report parents' income. Also, marrying means you may not have health insurance through parents anymore, or you never did. If you then need health care, you don't have to count the student loans and whatnot of the student spouse as income. So that means your income is only from whatever job you do have, or none, if you are also a student. That means now, as one household with a low income, you might qualify for state or federal medical assistance where you make too much to qualify as a single person. I did this. In my state, I was a law student. My wife had an undergrad degree and some experience, so she had various office jobs from $12.15 an hour, starting out. Obviously, this was not enough to let her buy into the crappy work insurance plan that barely covered anything, and she had bad depression at the time. I was lucky enough one semester to take a seminar on poverty law, where one learned about how to get different social assistance programs and legal help for indigent or low-income clients. Through that, I learned that the Medicaid expansion on income meant my wife could qualify income-wise for free healthcare if we got married, and she really needed it now. We had a very spur-of-the-moment wedding. Never told our families why it was so fast, though. Also, you get a pretty huge tax refund as a poor head of household, while the combination of that income plus student money lets you live to an okay standard. We had a small apartment right in the city, pets, decent and adequate food and clothes, a car about 5 years old, Netflix and movie discount cards, and weekly treats for ourselves. Then I immediately consolidated our student loans on my graduation, and we both applied for income-based repayment. It's worked okay. Since we now both work because I passed the bar exam, we both have to pay some money but are still able to raise our standard of living as we get more income. And I can write off bar association dues and costs of continuing classes on the taxes.